10 days since the terror attack that took place in Jammu and Kashmir, you've got Home Minister Amit Shah issuing a stern warning to terrorists and their backers, declaring that those responsible should not mistake the attack for a victory, and asserting very clearly that India will hunt down each and every one of these terrorists, saying this is the Narendra Modi government. We will not let them go. This, remember, is the message that's coming from the Home Minister right after Prime Minister Modi also said that their resolve to fight terror has not been shaken but has only been strengthened right now. In fact, 2 warnings came in from Home Minister Amit Shah in a matter of 1 hour from Delhi, where Shah reaffirmed the Modi government's unwavering commitment to uproot terror from Indian soil. Listen in to some of the highlights of what the Home Minister had to say first.
मैं सभी आतंक फैलाने वालों को कहना चाहता हूं कि लड़ाई का अंत नहीं है, एक मकाम है। हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी लिया जाएगा। नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में चाहे उत्तर पूर्व हो, चाहे वामपंथी उग्रवाद का क्षेत्र हो, चाहे कश्मीर पर पड़ी आतंकवाद की छाया हो, हर चीज का मजबूती के साथ हमने जवाब दिया है। और अगर कोई एक कायराना हमला कर कर ये समझता है कि हमारी बड़ी जीत है, तो एक बात मन से समझ लीजिए, ये नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार है, किसी को बख्शा नहीं जाएगा, किसी को बख्शा नहीं जाएगा। इस देश की इंच इंच भूमि पर से आतंकवाद को मूल समेत उखाड़ने का हमारा संकल्प है और वो सिद्ध होकर रहेगा। न केवल 140 करोड़ भारतीय, पूरी दुनिया भारत के साथ खड़ी है। लामबंद होकर सभी दुनिया के देश एक मुश्त होकर आतंकवाद के खिलाफ ये लड़ाई में भारत की जनता के साथ खड़े हैं। और मैं फिर से संकल्प दोहराना चाहता हूं, जब तक आतंकवाद समाप्त नहीं होगा, हमारी लड़ाई चालू रहेगी। और जिन लोगों ने एक कृत्य किया है, उसका उचित दंड उनको निश्चित रूप से दिया जाएगा।
Strong words used there by the Home Minister. Essentially a message to the survivors of the Pahalgam attack, to the families who lost their loved ones in that attack, that they will ensure justice is meted out to these families. Now, remember that this message comes in from the Home Minister after the Prime Minister issued one warning after another, vowing to deliver justice to these very families and promised the harshest form of punishment for the terrorists behind the Pahalgam attack. Here's a quick recap of what the Prime Minister said previously on this terror attack.
Today, from the soil of Bihar, I say to the whole world, India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Terrorism will not go unpunished. Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done. The entire nation is firm in this resolve. Everyone who believes in humanity is with us. मैं बहुत स्पष्ट शब्दों में कहना चाहता हूं, जिन्होंने ये हमला किया है, उन आतंकियों को और इस हमले की साजिश रचने वालों को उनकी कल्पना से भी बड़ी सजा मिलेगी। सजा मिलकर के रहेगी।
मुझे एहसास है हर भारतीय का खून आतंकी हमले की तस्वीरों को देखकर खौल रहा है। पहलगाम में हुआ यह हमला आतंक के सरपरस्तों की हताशा को दिखाता है, उनकी कायरता को दिखाता है। आतंकी और आतंक के आका चाहते हैं कश्मीर फिर से तबाह हो जाए और इसलिए इतनी बड़ी साजिश को अंजाम दिया। आतंकवाद के खिलाफ इस युद्ध में देश की एकता, 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की एकजुटता हमारी सबसे बड़ी ताकत है।
Okay, so you're seeing clearly a very strong message from the Modi government. 10 days since the Pahalgam terror attacks. We'll decode for you what the government has done so far. Gaurav Sawant is joining us live on NewsTrack with more on that. Gaurav, how do you read into this message that's coming in from the government? First, Prime Minister Modi, now Home Minister Amit Shah, issuing a very clear message that these terrorists will not be spared. In the last 10 days, we've seen several strikes really by India against Pakistan. Militarily, we're still waiting to see what kind of action the government will choose to take.
India is carrying out a series of measures to respond to Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror after the Pahalgam terror strike. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he spoke of how terror would be dealt with at source, and not just the terrorists but even their backers, a message that's been reiterated by Union Home Minister Amit Shah. In fact, if you notice, there's action that's being taken on ground in terms of Jammu and Kashmir Police, the Special Operations Group, the CRPF and the Army going after terrorists on ground, neutralizing either terrorists, the ecosystem, the overground workers, including destroying their homes. So that's the message internally. Along with that, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has also had a series of meetings with the Jal Shakti Minister C.R. Patil, and that is where Government of India says it's carrying out a long-term action against Pakistan to deter Pakistan from using terror as an instrument of state policy. So the Indus Waters Treaty, he's already directed the Jal Shakti Minister to carry out a feasibility study. Projects that had been stalled, they must start immediately. Water that goes to Pakistan, only the amount that Pakistan is entitled to should go. Remaining water, there are projects in Ladakh, there are projects in Kargil and Leh. There are hydropower projects, they need to be expedited. There are projects in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Kashmir Valley, they need to be expedited. The Kishan Ganga River project, where desilting and flushing operations have to be carried out, that needs to be expedited. So a series of measures from kinetic and non-kinetic, the government is moving forward on. The military option still remains on the table.
Absolutely. Gaurav, thanks for those details. We've been reporting consistently on the kind of action India has been taking against Pakistan and a series of diplomatic strikes. But also, importantly, the government is working on getting support from other countries, ensure that globally you isolate Pakistan. And many countries have publicly spoken out to condemn the recent terror attack in Pahalgam, with strong calls for peace, with strong calls also, importantly, for accountability. America has taken a very, very strong stand, urging both India and Pakistan to work together. But importantly, you had conversations that happened today. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, held talks with the External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, and separately with the Pakistan Prime Minister. You also had US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, speaking to Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. And let's focus really on what Pete Hegseth said. He dialed Defense Minister Rajnath Singh to express condolences over the loss of innocent lives. During that conversation, Rajnath Singh directly named and shamed Pakistan, called out Pakistan for its continued support for terror, labeling it a rogue state that must be held accountable. Hegseth reaffirmed Washington's full support for India's fight against terrorism and backed India's right to defend itself. Pakistan continues to make hollow claims of cracking down on terror. Only a handful of nations stand by it. India, in contrast, has the backing of major global powers united in its call to end cross-border terror once and for all.
I think we're going to see more of that message on both sides. We saw Secretary Rubio really urge the Pakistani side to condemn these attacks. And I think we'll continue to see that as well. What remains to be seen is, there are a lot of ways in which this could escalate, ways this could spiral. And in worst case scenarios, there are ways that Pakistan calls on one of its closest allies, China, and that could complicate things greatly. But for now, I think what we're going to continue to see are more calls from the U.S. to de-escalate and continued support for India in the face of this heinous attack against terrorism.
So many countries, after April 22nd, after the Pahalgam terror attack, issued statements condemning the terror attack. And then there are countries who have made it very clear that they stand with India. Let's break that down for you. We have marked out the countries in blue, which highlight the ones who are with India, versus green, which are with Pakistan. You will see that largely most parts of this map that we have highlighted is largely in blue. Most of the countries, US, UK, France, Italy, Israel, Russia, they've all made it very clear that they stand with India, and not just condemning the terror attack, but actually issuing a statement where they say that any step that propagates terror, there must be a crackdown on. There are only 3 countries essentially that are with Pakistan. It's the usual suspects: China, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. What do we mean by backing? Well, these 3 countries, China, Turkey, and Azerbaijan, have said there should be an investigation. Much like Pakistan, there should be an independent investigation. But we have to highlight here that even these 3 countries, while backing China, haven't really come forward and provided any sort of help or solidarity for that matter. Even China has condemned the Pahalgam terror attack. I'd like to bring in our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, for more details, really, on where countries stand, and particularly on America, Geeta. Because while America has spoken about de-escalation, very importantly, there's also a message that India sent across that we will name and shame Pakistan. With every country, we will say that Pakistan is involved in these kind of terror activities to further isolate the country.
Well, Akshita, world leaders are calling on India and, of course, Pakistan as well to de-escalate tensions. There are interests involved, stakeholders who do not want to see escalation in the South Asian region because it harms their interests, be it America that is at war with China, or China that has interests within Pakistan, stakes within Pakistan. But the fact of the matter is that India's message and signal is very clear to the world, particularly to the West and to the United States of America, that this attack on India, on Indian soil, is not going to go unnoticed, unspared, and India will not take this lying down. There's a very clear message that Pakistan and those who have backed these terrorists will have to pay a very, very heavy price for the lives lost in Pahalgam. And that's the message that India sent across to the United States of America. Therefore, while they sought de-escalation, they also went ahead as allies and strategic partners and have said that they will support India in whatever decision India takes. The 2 important calls that took place between Defense Secretary Hegseth and his counterpart, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, and then yesterday another call between Secretary of State Mark Rubio and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar. But the message from India very clear that this time around, instead of asking India to de-escalate tensions, it is time that Pakistan is reined in.
The idea is to call out Pakistan on every single platform and ensure countries recognize the fact that Pakistan continues to shield terrorists, helps them also actively in carrying out these terror attacks. Thanks very much, Geeta, for joining us with those details. The reality is, however, that the 4 terrorists who were involved in the Pahalgam terror attack, it's been 10 days, by the way, since that attack, they're still out there. They still haven't been nabbed. And there's a hunt, a massive manhunt that's underway to find these butchers. Armed forces are on the job. It's extremely dense jungles that surround Pahalgam. And sources tell us that Our forces believe these terrorists haven't been able to move out of South Kashmir because of the huge deployment of our forces. But considering that this is densely wooded areas, it's been quite a challenge to find out exactly where they are. These terrorists continue to be at large, and our forces, multiple deployments on ground there to identify them, to find them as soon as possible. Let's get you those updates on the hunt for these terrorists 10 days on in this next report.
10 days after the Pahalgam attack that killed 26 people, the terrorists remain at large. Despite non-stop operations by security forces in dense forest at different locations, the terrorists have managed to evade the dragnet. From the terrain to help from suspected overground workers to natural shelters like caves, the highly trained terrorists are using many factors to their advantage. The NIA team, which is camping in Baisaran Valley, is intensifying its probe. NIA Chief Sadanand Date visited the site and reviewed the situation. According to NIA sources, nearly 100 individuals have been questioned and 15 are under close scrutiny. Raids have been carried out across Jammu and Kashmir at suspected locations linked to overground workers, including those affiliated with separatist groups like Jamaat-e-Islami. Seizures during these raids indicate support for the terrorists. Areas like Kupwara, Handwara, Anantnag, Tral, Pulwama, Sopore, Baramulla and Bandipora have been under the scanner. Call records and other technical data are being analyzed to trace connections between overground workers and the terrorists. The NIA suspects that dense forests and caves in Anantnag district are being used as natural shelters by the terrorists. Intelligence inputs suggest they are well trained, likely from Pakistan, and carrying enough rations to survive for over a week. As per sources, initial probe revealed that terrorists had recce'd 3 areas in Pahalgam on April 15. Sources also revealed that a terrorist conducted a recce of Pahalgam's amusement park and that the attack was postponed due to tight security.
इस वक्त मैं जो पहलगाम का अम्यूज़मेंट पार्क है ठीक वहीं मौजूद हूं और आपको दिखाऊं यहाँ ये काफ़ी बड़ा पार्क है। पहलगाम के मेन मार्केट के पास पड़ता है और जो सोर्सेज ने इंडिया टुडे को बताया है कि 15 अप्रैल को जो आतंकवादी है जिन्होंने बैरसन घाटी में आतंकवादी हमला किया वो इस पार्क में भी आए थे और यहाँ की रेकी की थी।
Sources revealed that terrorists used ultra-set communication system. Through this system, terrorists can communicate and send messages without a SIM card. Security forces are confident it is only a matter of time before the terrorists behind the Pahalgam massacre are caught. With Kamaljeet and Arvind Ojha in Pahalgam, Mir Farid in Srinagar, Jitendra Bahadur in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's now get you a ground report from the borders of India and Pakistan. The Atari-Wagah border has been shut off. India first closed down the Atari border and then in a tit-for-tat move as expected, Pakistan shut down the Wagah border. But despite that, restrictions in place, India has allowed stranded Pakistani nationals to return home via the Atari border. Considering that we've asked all Pakistani nationals to leave, we've revoked their visas, they're being allowed to head back via the Atari border. And while India is allowing this, being magnanimous on humanitarian grounds, Pakistan, as expected, hasn't budged, leaving dozens of its own citizens stuck with little to no access of food or water or any basic supplies.
Pakistan shuts its door on its own citizens. They refused to open the Wagah border post on Thursday, even as Pakistani citizens being deported by India lined up to return home.
गेट खोलो मुझे यहाँ से भेजो मैं पाकिस्तान से खुद जाऊंगी मैं पाकिस्तान से यहाँ से गेट खुलवाओ अब कह रहे हैं वापस जाएं बॉर्डर नहीं खुलेगा बंद है बताएं सुबह 6 बजे से आए हैं ये तो इन्हीं से पूछे ना क्यों बंद है मासूम बच्चों के साथ छोटे छोटे बच्चे हैं हम पाकिस्तान जाना चाहते हैं मेरा बच्चा है वहाँ पर
The Pakistani nationals, many who have spent years here, are being deported as their visas have been cancelled following the Pahalgam terror attack. The deported citizens stranded on the Indian side were forced to wait in the punishing heat.
पाकिस्तान से अपील कर रहे हैं कि हमें ले लें, गेट खोल के हमें अपनी तरफ ले लें। हमें यहाँ से एग्जिट कर दिया गया है, हम यहाँ पे क्या करेंगे?
लोगों की क्या गलती है? हम तो परेशान हो रहे हैं ना सब। अब इसमें से सब लोग कुछ बीमार भी हैं, कुछ हैं, मैं क्या और बहुत सारे लोग हैं सर। इसमें से अगर किसी को कुछ हो गया तो उसका जिम्मेदार कौन सरकार होगी? पाकिस्तान सरकार होगी या इंडिया सरकार होगी सर?
Within just 6 days, 786 Pakistani nationals, including 55 diplomats and their staff, crossed back into Pakistan via the Atari-Wagah border. At the same time, 1,465 Indian citizens returned home from Pakistan. For many, the deadline has meant heartbreak. Families torn apart, lives uprooted, and decades of quiet existence in India brought to an abrupt end. The crackdown, ordered by Union Home Minister Amit Shah, followed the April attack that killed 25 tourists and a local resident in Pahalgam.
The vehicles lined up here since morning. This queue is halfened up now because a lot of vehicles have left back in dejection because they were waiting in the queue since morning 6 a.m. and they wanted to go back to Pakistan. But you can see children here, mothers here, they wanted to go back. But since Pakistan has not opened the Atari border gates, since then they had to wait here throughout the day.
As political tensions escalate, the human cost of terror and its aftermath is now playing out at the border. With Asim Bassi at Atari-Wagah border, Bureau Report, India Today.
So the step of closing down the Atari border was taken by India last week as part of a series of diplomatic strikes on Pakistan. So in our next report, I explain to you why India has taken the step and how Pakistan feels the pinch because of trade being cut off with the Atari border closed. India's decision to close the Atari border in the wake of the Pahalgam terror attack is set to severely cripple trade with Pakistan and Pakistan's economy as well. Located near Amritsar in India and Wagah in Pakistan, the Atari-Wagah border served as the sole permissible trade route between India and Pakistan. The Atari-Wagah land route was first opened in 2005 and truck movement on this route began 2 years later in 2007. The integrated checkpost at Atari was inaugurated on April 13, 2012 under the then UPA government, with provisions of facilities for fast and cost-effective land trade. Now, what we're seeing right now, this trade hiatus, isn't the first between the two neighbours. Even post the 1965 war, the 1971 war, the bilateral trade faced a huge setback. Borders were shut, were heavily fortified and militarised. Trade relations nosedived also in 2019 following the Pulwama terror attack. Post-Pulwama, India imposed a 200% duty on Pakistani goods and stripped its neighbour of the most favoured nation status. India had granted the most favoured nation or MFN status to Pakistan way back in 1996, but the neighbouring country had not reciprocated. Under the MFN Pact, a WTO member country is obliged to treat the other trading nation in a non-discriminatory manner, especially with regard to customs duty and other levies. In 2012, Pakistan had committed to giving the most favoured nation status to India, but retracted later due to domestic opposition. Now let's talk about the numbers, about trade between India and Pakistan over the years. According to official data, India exported items such as soybean, poultry feed, vegetables, red chilies, plastic granules, plastic yarn, and then they've imported goods like dry fruits, dates, gypsum, cement, glass, rock salt and herbs from Pakistan via the land port at Atari. India is clearly less dependent on Pakistan, with exports far exceeding imports. India's exports to Pakistan from April 2024 to January 2025, just for that period, stood at $447 million, while imports were a meager $0.42 million. So just see that difference. The exports and imports between 2023 to 24 were $1.18 billion and $2.88 million, respectively. Again, huge difference in the exports and imports. If you go back in time, we talk about 2022 to 2023, India exported goods worth $627 million. Between 2021 and 2022, that amount was lesser. It was $514 million. And you compare that to imported products. Remember the figure of $627 million of exports. Imports was against that at $20 million. And then $2.5 million was the figure of imported goods between 2021 to 2022. Total cargo movement also dropped from 49,102 consignments in 2018 to 2019 to just 3,827 in 2022 to 2023. So in the last few years, you're also seeing trade taking a big hit. This hasn't helped Pakistan. The aid-dependent Pakistani economy is facing recurring bouts of high inflation as well as widespread social unrest. Pakistan experienced a crazy economic crisis as part of the 2022 political unrest, where inflation skyrocketed to 38% as of May 2023, causing severe economic challenges for months. Food, gas, oil prices, all the essentials prices skyrocketed. Cessation of trade with India is set to only worsen Pakistan's economic woes, so it doesn't spell good news for them. The IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, has revised Pakistan's growth forecast downwards as expected to just 2.6%. They've cited the impact of US tariffs and have also warned that increasing global trade tensions would further hamper growth for Pakistan. Now, while direct trade between India and Pakistan via the Atari has been minuscule post the Pulwama attack in 2019, Afghan goods were still entering India via this route. Around 40 to 45 Afghan trucks carrying dry fruits, apples, other goods were reaching Atari daily. This movement has now ceased after Pakistan has denied passage to Afghan trucks. It's important to note that only Afghan imports were allowed through this route. Indian exports to Afghanistan were never permitted through Atari. Indian exports were already taking alternate routes. We're talking about sea and land routes using the Iranian seaport of Chabahar. Now, in 2024 to 2025, India's exports to Afghanistan was $264 million, while imports much higher at $591 million. So again, a very similar trend as India-Pakistan. The shutdown of the Atari-Wagah route for Afghan imports has led to a complete pause in goods movement via this land corridor. The governments are actively working on a solution. The biggest problem, however, remains for Pakistan. The Atari border closed, Pakistani visas revoked, a series of steps taken by the Indian government since the April 22nd Pahalgam attack. Again, a reminder, it's been 10 days since that attack, and we're going to continue tracking all the updates that come in, but it's a wrap on this edition of NewsTrack. Thanks very much for tuning in. Good night. Coming up on the other side of a short break is World Today with Geeta Mohan.